I was in Houston being interviewed on my book, Stuck in the Present, How History Frees and Forms Christians. And the guy interviewing me said to me, I bet it's easier today to get people, Christians, to want to do more rigorous learning, be more curious about things because we're living in a troubled time. It just seems like there's a lot of fracturing going on and ill will and struggles and all that sort of thing. And that made sense that he would ask a question in that sort of way, that in light of all the challenges we have, certainly that would instill a felt need for adults, for Christian adults, to want to learn. And I told him that sadly I was still having to do a fair amount of persuasive work, because actually it seemed like almost the opposite was taking place. That even though there was a need for Christians to give thoughtful engagement to all the cultural issues of our time, so many of us felt like that's too scary, it's too dangerous, it's going to take too much work, it's just too hard. I want to hunker down in my own little safe place and just not engage. And so the lack of curiosity, the lack of courage, frankly, to engage those issues. And I was thinking about the whole role of discipleship in the local church. And if you go to many churches, you'll find what Dallas Willard and J.I. Packer used to say all the time, the Christian education, Packer called it catechesis, but basically Christian education, Dallas Willard called it spiritual formation or discipleship, was almost non-existent in American churches. And if it was there, it was usually there as another ministry in kind of the smorgasbord of options. Like there's discipleship along with dozens of other things that you could possibly do, rather than a real centering activity. And I was thinking about a particular woman that I read about recently. I've heard about her for many years, but I read this terrific biography on her. The woman is Henrietta Mears. She was a director of education at Hollywood Press for about 30 years. And she came to the church. They tapped her specifically. She had a classical background. And she was appalled by how little people knew about the Christian faith and how shallow and superficial the Sunday school offerings were at all levels, from kids to adults. And she said, it's shameful. I mean, we're sending people from our high school ministry into college, and they're going to do robust work in their disciplines, whatever it is, physics or law or whatever they're studying, and yet here we are giving them superficial, just trite stuff. We need to make this really robust. And the Sunday school program just exploded there at Hollywood Press. And I've been thinking about this for a while, that the whole notion of thinking about discipleship, spiritual formation, again, whatever you, catechesis, whatever you want to call it, but just where there are meaningful rhythms and input that people are getting, so they're really growing in their grace and knowledge of Christ, rather than just kind of this, here's an option, we've got this class over here, and for those of you who are more serious about the Christian faith, you can go ahead and go in one of these classes, but for everyone else, you can just kind of pick whatever you want, and just kind of the smorgasbord approach. I just think we need to think through like what really ought to be the central ministries of the church, and I would argue that spiritual formation, discipleship really ought to be center to them.